In 1940, during the brutal Soviet occupation of Poland, young Polish army officer Janusz Wiskek was arrested by the NKVD on charges of espionage. Though innocent, he's caught in the oppressive machinery of Stalinist paranoia. During an emotionally wrenching interrogation, Janusz learns that his wife, under threat from Soviet authorities, has denounced him as a spy. Though he understands she was coerced, the betrayal still cuts deep. The Soviets offer him a chance to confess, but Janusz refuses, clinging to his integrity and the truth. As a result, he's sentenced to 20 years in a remote Siberian labor camp. The interrogation scenes are stark and unflinching, capturing the atmosphere of fear and mistrust that defined Stalinist purges. Janusz is transported across vast icy terrain by train, shackled with other prisoners. As the train snakes deeper into the Siberian wilderness, the desolation mirrors his despair. Janusz is stripped of his identity and thrust into a frozen world where survival depends on obedience or escape. Janusz arrives at the remote Siberian labor camp after a grueling journey. Surrounded by vast frozen wilderness, the gulag is a brutal world of constant surveillance, backbreaking labor, and biting cold. The prisoners are reduced to numbers, stripped of individuality, and forced into a daily grind of chopping timber, mining, and fighting hunger. Frostbite, starvation, and exhaustion are common, while guards patrol with rifles and cruelty. Inside the camp, Janusz meets a cast of inmates from different walks of life. There's Mr. Smith, a quiet but resourceful American engineer. Valka, a volatile Russian gangster, his body inked with tattoos and his temper sharp as his knife. Vash, a Latvian priest. Zoran, a Yugoslavian accountant. Tomasz, an artist, and Kasik, a timid Polish youth suffering from night blindness. Each man carries his own pain, but all share the same grim reality. Freedom is a dream buried deep beneath snow and barbed wire. Among them is Khabarov, a charismatic prisoner whose tales of escape ignite faint sparks of possibility. He speaks dreamily of a route south through Mongolia to freedom, though his plans seem more fantasy than feasible, describing a path through taiga forests, across Lake Baikal, south to Mongolia, and beyond. His stories, delivered with theatrical flair, stir Janusz, kindling a flicker of rebellion. Yet he admits to Janusz in a moment of candor that his plans are partly a coping mechanism, impractical dreams to endure captivity. Still, his words plant a seed of purpose in Janusz, awakening resolve. Though Khabarov never commits to fleeing, his influence is undeniable. While some dismiss escape as folly, Janusz begins to entertain the notion. As Janusz adapts to the gulag's brutal cadence, he is drawn to Khabarov's vivid narratives. Janusz begins mentally charting an escape, observing guard patterns, weather shifts, and supply caches. He learns to scavenge scraps, conserve strength, and navigate by stars, preparing for an uncertain bid for freedom. Meanwhile, a fragile bond forms among a small group of inmates. Mr. Smith proves reliable, his pragmatism a steady anchor. Zoran reveals a sharp mind behind his reticence, while Voss offers quiet moral guidance. In hushed exchanges they share stories, building trust beneath the guard's watchful gaze. Inspired by Khabarov's vision, though aware of its flaws, Janusz resolves to escape and reclaim his life. He confides in 6 trusted men, Mr. Smith, Valka, Tomasz, Zoran, Voss, and Kasik. Together they devise a plan, their resolve tempered by the knowledge that failure means death. After weeks of quiet planning, Janusz finalizes his escape. A blizzard is approaching, a perilous yet ideal veil to slip past watchtowers. As snow falls in blinding sheets, Janusz signals to the 6 men he trusts, Mr. Smith, Valka, Tomasz, Zoran, Voss, and Kasik. Together they seize the moment, slipping through a breach in the camp's perimeter. Guards, obscured by the storm, remain unaware. Their first taste of freedom is not triumphant, but terrifying. Visibility is nil, winds lash their faces, and each step through deep snow drains their strength. They must move, or perish. Navigating by instinct through frozen woods, they carry scant supplies, a few crusts of bread, tattered clothing, and fragile hope. Kasik, hindered by night blindness, stumbles frequently, the storm exacerbating his disorientation. They scavenge animal remains, and watch for Soviet patrols, using moss on trees to gauge direction. Cold gnaws at their bones, but halting is not an option. By dawn the blizzard begins to clear. They have put miles between themselves and the camp, but safety is far from guaranteed. The Siberian wilderness stretches endlessly ahead, and they are ill-equipped and starving. Still, they are free, and alive. The escape launches a grueling odyssey. With no map, meager provisions, and Janusz's determination as their guide, the group ventures deeper into the wild. They face not only cold but also wolves shadowing their steps, and moral dilemmas, whether to prioritize the group's survival over a struggling member. Just 2 nights after their daring escape, the brutal Siberian winter claims its first victim. Kasik, the youngest among them and plagued by night blindness, becomes increasingly vulnerable. During a frigid night, while the others are asleep, Kazakh quietly wanders away from the campfire. Perhaps disoriented, perhaps seeking privacy. No one notices until morning. When the group awakens, panic sets in. They fan out to search, but it's too late. They find Kazakh's body frozen in the snow only a short distance from where they'd camped. Exhausted and disoriented, the group presses on through snow-covered forests, moving by day and huddling for warmth by night. The cold is relentless and their supplies are nearly non-existent. They ration pieces of bread and try to conserve energy, but nature's cruelty is unyielding. The moment is sobering. Janusz and the others bury Kazakh with bare hands, unable to dig deep through the frozen earth. It's a quiet, heart-wrenching burial. They mark the grave with stones, standing in silence as the wind howls around them. The reality of their situation sharpens. This journey is no longer just about escaping, it's about surviving. Weeks into their journey, the escapees emerge from the Siberian forest and arrive at the shores of Lake Baikal, the world's deepest freshwater lake. The sight is staggering, a vast icy expanse stretching endlessly, a stark contrast to the dense forests they've endured. The group, weak and frostbitten, is on the verge of collapse. Food is scarce and their physical strength is rapidly fading. Still, Lake Baikal represents a milestone. They've survived the taiga, and they press on. While navigating the frozen terrain near the lake, the men come across a teenage girl hiding in the woods. Dirty, starving, and alone, she introduces herself as Irena, claiming her parents were killed by Soviet soldiers, and she fled a collective farm. Valka, ever suspicious, questions her story, while Mr. Smith notes inconsistencies, such as her mention of Warsaw, then under German control. Irena later admits her parents were communists, executed by the regime, her initial tale a shield for survival. Despite doubts, Janusz insists she join them, swayed by her vulnerability. The group reluctantly agrees. Irena brings unexpected comfort to the men. Her presence softens the group's hardened dynamic, reminding them of family, humanity, and life beyond survival. She listens, asks questions, and learns from the others. Over shared meals and firelight, she begins to bond with them. Though physically weak, her spirit becomes a quiet source of strength. Crossing Lake Baikal is perilous. Cracks in the ice and fierce winds threaten every step. Yet the group moves forward, with Janusz navigating using a makeshift compass of stick and stone, scanning the horizon, driven by instinct. The journey continues southward, now with a new companion in tow. After Baikal, the group finally reaches the border of Mongolia. The sight of the border post sparks hope that crossing this line would mark their first true step away from Soviet territory. But as they pass into Mongolia, their joy is short-lived. They are greeted not by freedom, but by a landscape adorned with statues of Lenin and Stalin, revealing that Mongolia, at this point in history, is still under Soviet influence. This realization crushes the group's morale. They had dreamed of safety across the border, only to find the same oppressive regime waiting. Faced with the bitter truth, Janusz concludes they must continue further south, across the vast Gobi Desert, toward China and ultimately India. It is an unimaginable distance, but the only option. Here, Valka, the hardened Russian criminal, makes his decision. Fiercely nationalistic and deeply rooted in Soviet ideology, Valka refuses to go further. The idea of leaving Soviet soil, despite its cruelty, is unthinkable to him. He chooses to stay in Mongolia, preferring the familiar hardships of the system he knows, over the uncertainty beyond. His farewell is abrupt, but not without weight. The group parts ways with Valka, each man silently respecting his choice. For Janusz and the others, the journey must go on. Now reduced in number and facing an even harsher stretch of wilderness, the group turns south once again. Leaving Mongolia behind, the group enters the vast, unforgiving Gobi Desert. Gone is the icy wilderness, in its place endless dunes and scorching sun. Water becomes the most precious resource, and the desert proves even deadlier than the Siberian forest. The men are weakened, sunburned, and dehydrated. Every step is a struggle, and mirages blur their sense of direction. The heat is relentless. Supplies dwindle to almost nothing. Irena, already fragile from weeks of hardship, begins to falter. Her body, young but malnourished, can't withstand the extremes of the desert. Despite encouragement from Janusz and Mr. Smith, she grows weaker by the hour. The group takes turns supporting her, but her strength continues to fade. One morning, after a night of rest, they find her too weak to rise. Realizing the inevitable, Irena speaks quietly with Janusz. She thanks the men for giving her a sense of family and a final chance at freedom. With heartbreaking clarity, she chooses to stay behind, sparing the group from the burden of carrying her further. The men give her water and shade, knowing it may not be enough, and walk away in solemn silence. Irena's loss shakes the group deeply. Her presence had reminded them of innocence and hope. Now her absence deepens the emotional weight of the journey. With no time to grieve, the men march on, driven by the desperate will to survive. The Gobi Desert continues to take a merciless toll. With Irena now gone, the remaining men, Janusz, Mr. Smith, Tomasz, Zoran and Voss, are reduced to staggering figures against the sun-bleached horizon. Their lips are cracked, their feet blistered, and their bodies skeletal. Desperation creeps in, as each day passes without water. Tomasz, once spirited and artistic, grows delirious from heatstroke and exhaustion. He begins hallucinating, mumbling to himself and stumbling off course. The others try to steady him, but it's clear his body is giving up. As they rest beneath a sliver of shade, Tomasz quietly collapses. The group gathers around him, offering the last of their strength and comfort. He dies without complaint, his face sunken but peaceful. Grief-stricken and nearly broken, the group trudges on. Hours blur into one another until the faint shimmer of a mirage becomes something real. A muddy stream, small but life-saving, winds through the sand. The men fall to their knees, scooping water with trembling hands, laughing and crying between gulps. This discovery is a turning point, both physically and emotionally. For the first time in days, they feel the possibility of survival. Tomasz's death is honored in silence. They press forward with renewed determination, aware that luck in the desert can vanish as quickly as it appears. The water saves them, but the price they've paid is immense. With the Gobi Desert behind them, Janusz, Mr. Smith, and Zoran face their final obstacle, the Himalayas. The towering mountains loom ahead, majestic but merciless. The men are skeletal, their bodies near collapse, but their spirits remain anchored to one goal: freedom in British-controlled India. Climbing into the snow-covered peaks, they battle high altitudes, freezing temperatures and treacherous terrain. The mountains test their endurance as fiercely as the desert ever did. One wrong step could end everything, but together they push upward. Snow lashes their faces, oxygen thins, still they climb. Zoran suffers terribly, nearly succumbing to exposure, but Janusz and Mr. Smith refuse to leave him behind. They share what little food and warmth remains, driven by solidarity. At last, on the brink of collapse, the men stumble into a remote British outpost in northern India. Soldiers rush to their aid, astonished by the survivors' condition. They're fed, clothed and treated, finally safe after thousands of miles and unimaginable hardship. It's a quiet victory, earned not with fanfare but sheer will. Janusz's heart remains tied to Poland and his wife. Decades later, after communism's fall, he returns home. The film closes on their reunion, silent, understated, their embrace carrying the weight of years apart, leaving their reconciliation open-ended. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more in-depth recaps and reviews. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the hidden truths in every story.